All right, let's get started. Hello, everybody. My name is Craig. I'm an NFCDS fellow here at the University of Notre Dame. I work in the chemistry department, and I'm a fifth-year graduate student, and I'm getting ready to write my dissertation. The university provides sort of two options for us to write our dissertations. You can either use Microsoft Word or Google Docs, I guess, or Latex. And one of the great advantages of writing your dissertation or thesis in Latex is that you don't really have to worry as much about the formatting as you would have to do in Microsoft Word. Latex just has this built-in structure that seamlessly integrates citations, figure labeling, and just general formatting structures, which makes it an ideal candidate to write highly formatted documents. So today I'm going to talk about, so this is a 2-hour workshop. For the first hour, I'm going to be talking about the ND-DIS package, which is what the University of Notre Dame provides to write your dissertation or thesis. Once I finish up that hour, the second hour of the workshop's entirely for you. If anybody here wants to sit back and work on their dissertation or work on the document and has any questions, I'm here for that second hour to address any questions. But if you don't have to work on your dissertation or you don't want to work on your dissertation after that hour, you're more than welcome to leave after the first hour of the workshop. I host all of my LaTeX workshops off of GitHub. If you've never used GitHub before, it's essentially a giant repository. Well, it's a website that allows you to control version controlled things. I'm essentially using it as a website. So if you would please open your computers or log on one of the desktops in front of you and go to github.com/cwait/LaTeX workshop, it should bring you to this homepage. And I did an earlier workshop this year just about how to use LaTeX in general. You're more than welcome to go through these little different chapters to see the different functionality that LaTeX has and essentially how you format tables, equations, etc. Today, we are going to focus on the Notre Dame dissertation template. So if you go to the Notre Dame dissertation template, if you go to my GitHub and you click on the Notre Dame dissertation template, it should take you here. Before I continue, is there anybody who still needs to get to the LaTeX workshop? Okay, great. So if you've never used GitHub, essentially what I'm doing is I'm writing all of these things down in Markdown mode. It's a convenient way for me to present this information. There is one inconvenient thing, which is I can enter in hyperlinks. However, if you click a hyperlink, it will just override whatever's in this window. So if you see any hyperlinks in this tutorial or in this workshop, I highly recommend you right click and open in a new tab. This way you don't lose your current page. So Notre Dame provides a whole bunch of different resources. If you click that link, it'll take you to the author resources page. And they put the formatting guide, the checklist, and a couple of Microsoft Word templates, as well as a link to the GitHub for the ND-DIS package that we're going to talk about today. Notre Dame actually did something very clever, which is they integrated ND-DIS into overleaf. If you're not familiar with what overleaf is, it's a cloud-based LaTeX editor. This way you don't actually have to download or install any of LaTeX code on your personal computer. As long as you're connected to the internet and you have an account with overleaf, you can write LaTeX documents anywhere in the world and you don't have to download or install anything. So we are actually not going to follow the directions listed here in this LaTeX documentation. Instead, what I did is I more or less rewrote what's presented in this material down here in this little workshop. I do want to make a note that I wrote this workshop or tutorial this year. If you're not planning on submitting your dissertation this year, that's fine. but the graduate school can change their formatting requirements for their dissertation and thesis. So it is imperative that you always refer back to these checklists before submitting your dissertation or thesis for review. This Notre Dame package was written in 2013, so most of the formatting things are about the same from 2013 till today, but the graduate school can completely change up their formatting for dissertations or thesis next year or the years after. So please just be aware that you should always follow what's presented in these checklists. And if something is wrong with the ND Dis package, you should reach out to dteditor@nd.edu. And you can always find the source code for this LaTeX package on that GitHub repo. You can modify that package and run LaTeX on your own personal computer. That just takes a lot of tech savvy things that personally I don't even know how to do perfectly yet, but I'm learning how to do it. So that was my little disclaimer about writing your dissertation and thesis. So in the first hour, we're going to cover what that package is and how to customize it for your dissertation or thesis. We'll discuss how to set up your preamble in your LaTeX document, how to create chapters and sections and subsections. And then that will be the end of the first hour. During the second hour, I'll just very, very quickly cover some advanced topics that you might come across when making your dissertation. But these are sort of rare circumstances that you don't see in many dissertations or theses. Okay. So the ND Dis 2E package was written using a subset of other packages. So if you're familiar with LaTeX, usually if you want to create a table, you want to make a figure, you want to add something, you'll include the command use package something. ND Dis essentially took a whole bunch of use packages, and added them in one convenient source. All you need to include is this document class, open bracket, squiggly bracket, ND Dis, and this will load a whole bunch of formatting specifications and packages that have been pre-saved on overleaf. So what we can do is we can go to overleaf. Does anyone here, by show of hands, not have an overleaf account? Okay, I'm going to take a step back for a second. I'm just going to go back here. Create an overleaf account. So creating an overleaf account is pretty simple. If you just go to overleaf.com, it will ask you to sign in. When you're signing in, or excuse me, it'll ask you to register. You can click this green register button from when you're at overleaf.com. And then it'll ask you to enter in your username and password and to register. You can either use your Notre Dame credentials, which I recommend. If you use your Notre Dame credentials, you'll get a whole bunch of cool add-ons to overleaf. You'll be able to synchronize the GitHub, version tracking, a whole bunch of cool things. You can enter in your Notre Dame email as well as a password and click the register button. You can also register through Google. Do not click this link at the bottom, which says log in through your institution. That just does not work for some reason. Well, it works for some institutions. It doesn't work for a Notre Dame license. So once you register your email, it'll ask you to, it'll say, welcome to your first, welcome to Overleaf. You can click create first project, type in dissertation template, and then it'll take you to a blank document, which I'll show, which will, everybody else will catch up in a second. So for everybody who raised their hand and said they did not have an Overleaf account, are you set up at now? Awesome. All right, let me go back. Okay, so I'm going, if you have an Overleaf account, what you could do is you could start with a new project, click blank project. I'm going to call this dissertation template, create. And we get our first project started. If you're new to overleaf, you have 3 windows here. This window on the left is sort of our project managing space. If you're going to include folders or if you're going to include folders or other documents that you want to add to your dissertation, that stuff would be listed out here. This middle window is where you're actually going to be typing your LaTeX code. And this window on the far right is the exported PDF. So for example, if I wanted to change the date to, let's say, April, I could just change the date, click this recompile button in the top right corner, and the PDF will be exported on the right. Okay, so what we're going to do is we are going to add the ND-Dis package to our template. And what I've done in GitHub, and this is another reason why I like GitHub, is I've written these code blocks for you just to copy and paste. If you hover over in the top right-hand corner of this code block, there's a little copy to clipboard button. What I'm going to ask everyone to do is just copy that to your clipboard, go to the dissertation template, and just paste all of the information that's in this document with the things you just copied. Now, if you're not familiar with overleaf, you'll notice several commands are color coded. You have these blue lines of text. Those are LaTeX commands. You will see green text. Those are either comments or specific options associated with those commands. And then you have black lines of text, which are just text that usually just shows up in the LaTeX document. What I'm going to do is I'm going to paste that information and click the recompile button. Okay, when you recompile, you'll get the PDF on the right. You'll notice there's actually 2 pages associated with this PDF. You got this ugly first document that sort of tells it information about the dissertation title and the author. And you also have, the second page. Here you go. The second page, which looks much more professional and actually looks like the cover page of your dissertation. You'll notice up here, I have this document class, square bracket, and then squiggly bracket. The things that goes in the squiggly bracket is essentially the package that we want to use. So we want to use the ND-Dis2E package. ND-Dis2E has several options. We did not specify those options in the square brackets. Because we didn't specify those options, it just took some default values, which is why it generated that ugly page at the top and then this page here on the right. We're going to customize some of these options so that you can have a properly formatted dissertation or thesis. Then we have all of this information in between that document class and this command that says begin document. This is the information of your dissertation, your title, the author's name, whether it's a dissertation or a thesis, your advisor's name. If you're co-advised by somebody, there's even an option to add a second advisor, and the department you work in. Between lines 1 and 13 is your preamble. That is it. You do not need to add anything else. If you have some specialized things that you want to add, it's possible to add those, but you do not need to add anything else to get a properly formatted dissertation. This thing is going to load up the figures package, the tables package, the maths package, everything. You should be wary about adding some other packages. There is a known issue. Some people like to use the package sub captions in order to write multiple figures with multiple captions. If you were to import this package and ND-Dis, neither would work. And there's currently like no workaround that other than downloading the ND-Dis package and actually manipulating the code and running LaTeX on your own personal computer. But in overleaf, there's no way to combine these two packages. That's not every package, it's just these two packages happen to have conflicts, and there's a few others out there. So you should be careful about adding additional sub packages. Everything between the begin document, so everything between lines 15 and 21 is the actual body and content of your dissertation. That's where we're going to put all of the front matter, including the table of contents, acknowledgements, and then the main matter and the back matter. All right, are there any questions before we go on?
What if I wanted to have the functionality of having whatever sub packages do?
Sub captions?
Yeah. Would I still want to use this approach to write it up, or would
you just can't use the sub captions package with this dissertation template? If you absolutely need the sub caption package, then you're going to have to either find your own workaround around this dissertation package. Personally, even when writing manuscripts, I never use the sub caption package. If I need to write sub captions, I'll go to a photo editor like Illustrator, Photoshop, or GIMP. I'll arrange my figures in that document and I'll write my captions in there. The trick is just picking the right font. If this document's written in Times New Roman, then when you're writing in your photo editor, you better use Times New Roman. I actually just find that easier than using the sub caption package in general. The sub caption package, the reason why it has issues is because it's just a tricky package to use. Okay, if you look at the title information, you'll see my title is my dissertation title, a very long-winded and /protect professional looking title that may only a select few /protect. Oh, there it goes. / people will end up reading. If you need to put in line breaks, you put in the / that forces a line break. And I'm just telling LaTeX. LaTeX is a very smart program. It's going to try to make corrections as needed. I'm telling LaTeX, hey, I put this line break here for a reason, so you better listen to me and put this line break here. It's really only needed for the title. You don't really need to put it in other places. Protect is somewhat antiquated. But if you do need to put line breaks in your title to make sure it fits within the margin, you put the you could put the /, and if it's still not working, you put the protect to say, definitely put your line breaks here. Okay, so now we're going to customize the ND-dis options. So all of these options go in these square brackets right here. And there's several options that you could select. So if you're writing a draft, a document to be reviewed, or the final document, you can add the options draft, review, or final. If you want your citations to be ordered numerically or by author's last name, you can change the options numref or text refs. Depending on your field, one is more appropriate than the other. I know in the sciences, we usually use numrefs, but in the humanities, they use text refs. The graduate school doesn't care which one you choose as long as you stick to one of those two conventions. If you are co-advised by somebody, you can add the option to advisors. If you want that disgusting first page to disappear, you could type no info and it'll get rid of that first page. And then the final options are how you want the citations to be presented in the document. So if, let's say, a particular sentence has 3 citations to it, it can either be labeled as 1, 3, 2, in which case that means I just used well, actually, no, that's not there. It could be sorted as 1, 2, 3, which means I've just sorted them numerically as they appeared. It could be 1 through 3, which is compressed, or what's usually done is sort and compress, which makes sure they show up in the right order and in the abbreviated form. The compressed really doesn't make sense unless you're doing author citations, the text refs here. So what we're going to do is we're just going to take this document class here. I've chosen to set this up with the options final, nums refs, sort and compress, no info. We're just going to copy this line of text and replace the first line. And then I'm going to recompile. And so that first page is gone. And now I have my cover page of my dissertation or my thesis. And then the second page says this document was prepared with the LaTeX package. Don't worry about that. That's allowed to be included in your dissertation or thesis. If you really don't want to include it at the end of your document, you just say make a new page and you throw out that page at the end. But that you don't have to worry about being included or not. That's sort of just like saying credit goes to Notre Dame for helping you for helping formatting this dissertation. Okay, so that's everything that needs to go in the preamble. You now no longer need to worry about formatting your dissertation. I'm going to say 95% of the formatting is now done by just specifying these options: final, numref, sort and compress, no info. Okay, is there any questions about what we do in the preamble?
In the first option for the option, what does final draft and review do other than just labeling whether?
If you put in draft, your figures are probably not going to pop up in your final. It'll just be a box where the figure goes.
Okay.
That's usually just done to help speed up compilation. So if your dissertation gets really long and you keep hitting this recompile button, you might end up saying, oh, wow, I'm sitting here for 20 seconds waiting for it to compile. So draft is just a speedier way of getting the document to compile. Review will space out the text so people can write like in between lines. And I think I forget what the default is, if it's single spaced or 1.5 space. I know it makes the spaces larger between lines, so your advisor, if they're reading it, can make edits to it. Usually when I'm working, I just work in the final because I just like to see how it's going to be presented at the end.
So there's no latex set up, everything just
Yeah, so hidden behind that document class are a whole bunch of different packages that are being loaded. So you don't have to load any external packages. You can, just some of them might have conflicts, and so you're kind of out of luck there. Most should work though.
So what's the default citation style?
It's either MLA or APA, I forget. I'll get into citations in a little bit and how you can control them. Good questions. Are there any other questions? All right. So your front matter is where you're going to put essentially your copyright information, your abstract, your table of contents, everything that needs to be put before the main text. The university requires that all of this front matter, the page numbers, be labeled with Roman numerals, I, X, XV, whatever. Those all those things have to be labeled with Roman numerals. Your main content is written with Arabic numerals, 1, 2, 3, 4. The command front matter is telling LaTeX, hey, all of this stuff, I need you to number with the pages in Roman numerals. When we get to the command main matter, it's going to switch over to Arabic numerals. So the command front matter, is that here? Yep, the command front matter here is just saying, hey, the stuff that's preceding this, please make sure that you give it the correct page numbering format. I'm not gonna go through all of these things, I mean, in detail for copy and pasting. I'm just gonna go over the things that you can add to the front matter. So we have the copyright information, the abstract. If you're writing a dissertation, abstracts are mandatory. If you're writing a thesis, they're optional. Dedication, the table of contents, those are mandatory. One of the great things about LaTeX is that these 3 lines of code are all you need in order to format your table of contents. You never have to go back and add things to your table of contents. LaTeX is just going to keep track of them for you. You have the preface, acknowledgements, and if you have symbols that you can include, we have all these different sections. Right down here, where it says the whole document and the preamble and front matter should look something like this. You could just copy this large chunk of code and paste it into your dissertation template. If you've made the edits to the author name, just know you're going to overwrite that stuff. But what you could do is just paste that, recompile. And so we have our cover page. If I scroll down, there's the copyright information. If I scroll down more, there's the dedication that I wrote, or excuse me, that's the abstract. There's the dedication. There's the table of contents. You'll notice that these red squares are around the table of content. You can ignore those. Those are just hyperlinks that will take you to a different location in the document. So if I wanted to go to the figures page, I can just click there and it'll take me to figures in the PDF. But so we have our table of content that's been labeled with Roman numerals. When we add figures, those figures will be updated there. When we add tables, they will be updated here. There's the preface, acknowledgements, and symbols. That is everything you need to do for your front matter. You'll edit the abstract and the dedication and all that stuff yourself, but you do not need to actually edit the table of contents. That stuff just gets added live as you write. Are there any questions? All right, so that's the front matter. Now we go to main matter. So this is the actual content of your document. In the main matter, you're essentially going to have all your chapters as well as appendices if you have it. Very rare, but you can add unnumbered chapters. Or excuse me, yes, unnumbered chapters. Essentially, that just starts with your chapter counting at 0. Most people don't need unnumbered chapters. However, if you do want to make an unnumbered chapter, the directions to do that are here. I'm just going to skip down and go to this chapter section. So if you want in your LaTeX document, you can go right below the symbols and begin typing your chapter 1. And then once you finish chapter 1, you can begin chapter 2, 3, 4, etc. That is fine, except in the end, you're going to have one file that's massive. And let's say you gave it to your advisor to review and they said, you know what, I think chapter 2 and chapter 3 should be reversed. Now you have to go back to this document and you have to copy and paste and move things around. That could be very tedious. When you're making a big document like this, what's really recommended is you create separate files here on the left and you refer to those files within your main document. So let me show an example. So here I wrote my first chapter. What I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new file called chapter1.tech, and I'm going to add this. So I'm going to go back to overleaf. I'm going to click new file, and I'm going to call this chapter1.tech. Create. I'll go to chapter1.tech. It should be empty. I'm going to go back to my code block and just copy this here. I'm going to paste it. And so what I've listed here is chapter 1, excuse me, the chapter, which I called introduction. The section is overview. You can write subsections. You can label those sections so you can refer to them later in the document. We won't get into that there. I've also included a footnote. So if anybody here is writing a dissertation that's going to have footnotes, you can easily incorporate footnotes like that. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to main.tech and I want to tell LaTeX, hey, please read chapter1.tech and put it here in the document. To do that, I'm going to first type the command main matter. So the document knows to start numbering these pages with Arabic numerals. And I'm going to say include chapter1.tech. So I'm going to copy that, paste. I'm going to scroll down below symbols, and I've got my first chapter here, chapter 1. It's what the include is doing is it's reading that chapter1.tech file. And it's labeled everything with chapter 1, section 1, subsection 1. There's my footnote, and you'll notice that the page number has now started counting down from 1. If I go up to the table of contents, you'll notice that my contents has now updated and chapter 1 is in there. If, for example, I forgot to include the command main matter and I recompile, I now no longer have chapter 1, I have chapter 0, and everything's still being numbered with Roman numerals. So that's another way of creating a unnumbered chapter. But again, as I said, unnumbered chapters are kind of rare. If you do want to include an unnumbered chapter, you're only allowed one unnumbered chapter in your dissertation. But technically the LaTeX package has no control. You can technically have an infinite number of unnumbered packages, but the school requires you to have no more than one. I should also mention, if you ever come across errors while writing your LaTeX documents, they show up, or they are an explanation of those errors are showing up here. As soon as you type the command document class ND_dis, you're going to get these 4 warnings. You could just ignore those warnings. It's essentially saying, hey, you're using a really old package to write this document. You may want to upgrade to a newer package. That's because this was written back in 2013. Those packages still work and they're still fine to use, but you can just ignore those 4 warnings. Okay, if you wanted to include appendices, you can use the command similar to main matter /appendix, and then you can include the appendix. I won't go through an example of that, but that's essentially all you would do for incorporating chapters. Once I have chapter 2 ready, I would make the chapter 2.tech, chapter 3.tech, etc. Once I have my appendices, I do /appendix, and then write out my appendices the same way using the include commands. This keeps the main.tech file small and easy to manage. Now, if I needed to switch the location of 2 chapters, I would just need to change these to include statements instead of actually copying and pasting all the content over. Yeah.
So, for example, the chapter 1 always be the background.
No, well, it depends on your dissertation.
Yeah, I mean,
It's not necessarily your background. It
Okay.
could just be the first chapter.
Okay, my question is, so when we write the chapter 1 text, you don't need to include any package in here?
Nope. This is what all the include is saying is please read this.
Yeah.
And so all it's doing is it's just in the code, it's just taking what it sees here and copies it right into here.
Oh, so if I just input some table, input some figure, and then include some.
Yep, you don't have to include any use packages anywhere.
Okay.
The packages are just integrated into into this package. So you don't have to include any packages anywhere else.
So the preamble, whatever chapter you're writing, will be the preamble of the main.
Right. You cannot add packages in between the commands begin document and end document. All the use packages have to be put in the preamble. And the preamble is technically that one line which says /document class. And that's just loading in a whole bunch of packages for you. Okay, if you want, you can copy this whole code block here. This is just essentially what we've done so far in the template. I'm just going to Command A, Command V, recompile. And then are there any other questions?
Yeah, I'm just curious. I never heard of an unnumbered chapter before. Would you have to have an example of like what?
It's kind of like a preface.
Okay.
So you could either put that information in the preface or in the unnumbered chapter. It just depends on the length. If it's a long preface, it should really be an unnumbered chapter. But again, they're kind of rare, and you can't have more than one. So it's kind of moot. All right, and then finally, I should mention, I completely forgot. If I go back to chapter 1.tech, you'll notice I've commented out a few lines. Your dissertation can be written with your citations chapter-wise, or your citations all at the very end of the dissertation. It does not matter, you choose which one. If you want to do them chapter-wise, you include your citations here. If you want to put them all at the end, you include them at the end. And in a couple of minutes, I'm actually going to talk about how to include citations. But if you have multiple chapters and you want to do your citations chapter-wise, you would just have these last 2 lines there. That bibliography style dictates what sort of style you want to do, MLA, APA. You could find that information in the overleaf documentation. And then bibliography just points to a file that we're going to make in a second that contains all your citations. Okay. So we've got the back matter now. And this is where if you're not doing the citations chapter wise, this is where you're going to put all your citations in back matter. So what I'm going to do is I am going to copy this chunk of code that says back matter, bibliography style, and bibliography. And I'm going to go back to main.tech, and I'm just going to add that stuff underneath the include. So now I'm starting my back matter. I want my bibliography style to look like that, and my bibliography to be example.bib. I forgot the bib in there. I apologize. That should be example.bib. And this is going to point to a file we're going to make in here right now. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new file. I'm going to call it example.bib. I'm going to go back to my dissertation, to the LaTeX workshop, and I'm going to scroll all the way up. I'm going to go back to the LaTeX workshop. So I'm at the home page of the LaTeX workshop. If you scroll down a little bit, there's an advanced topic called how do you add citations. I'm just going to copy that. I'm going to scroll down a little bit, and this little chunk here that says at article, at book, at in collection, I'm just going to copy. I'm going to move that back into example.bib. Okay, did I go too fast? Does anyone have any questions? Okay, so I'm going to go back to where I was in the LaTeX workshop. So here is the back matter. Okay. I'm going to go back to chapter 1, and I'm just going to add some citations. So here where I said, oh, well, not there. This sentence here where it says, this is a high level overview of what's expected in this chapter. I'm going to cite. And then what this is doing is it's actually reading example.bib for me. So I'm going to cite M85. I'm also going to cite AB94. I'm going to cite AH 2006, and I'm going to cite AHU 61. What overleaf is doing is it's reading example.bib, and it's reading the first line after book, after in collection, after in proceedings. This is essentially like your citation nickname. So if you ever wanted to refer to this particular citation, you would just refer to its nickname. If you have 100, 200 citations, you can actually import your citations. If you're using a citation manager like I always forget where this is. Yeah, but where's the import? Oh, if you click upload, there it is. If you click upload, if you're using Mendeley or Zotero, you can upload those citations and it'll essentially make a bibliography file for you. But what it's doing is it's just reading those little nicknames. I'm going to go back to main.tech. I'm going to go back to chapter 1. I added some citations there. I'm going to go back to main.tech and hit recompile. And you'll see I now have citations 1 through 4 sticking with that line of text. And if I scroll down, I have a bibliography file page, which includes all the citations in whichever format I declared, which is abbrev.nat, which I think is AP, which I think is MLA. If I didn't like that 1 through 4, and I wanted it to be listed 1, 2, 3, 4. I'm going to go all the way back up, and I'm going to change sort and compress to just sort. And now it's actually listing out all the numbers for me, 1, 2, 3, and 4. If I didn't want num refs and I want text refs, oh, that's not right. AB, oh, did I type something in wrong? Well, so if you type text refs, what it should do is it should write the author's name for you. You'll notice one of my citations here, AB9, that's not an author name. the code I gave it. So I'm going to scroll, I'm going to switch back to chapter 1 and AB9. I wonder why this one didn't work. Oh, let me just recompile again. And again. Still not working. Let me go to example.bib. Right here, AB9. For some reason, I put an asterisk after the author. Let me delete that asterisk. Go back to main, recompile. There we go. So now it's just listing out all the authors, name and the year. If I do compress, I wonder what happens. I haven't actually tested this one out yet before. So it's not sorting them, and it's listing multiple authors. So I'll go back to sort and compress. There we go, and now it's alphabetical order, right? So if you, regardless if you do this chapter wise or at the very end of your document, either interspersed between your chapters or at the end of the document, you'll have this bibliography file, a set of pages that organizes all the citations as they've appeared in the document that you've referred to. So essentially, very little formatting. This has all just been content driven. All the formatting was taken care in this one line of code, and LaTeX knew exactly how to format the document. If you want to change the formatting of the document, you essentially change the document class. All right, that is the back matter, and at a high level, that is it. You now have a completed template to start working on your own dissertation or thesis. Are there any questions? Okay, with that, that is it. That is all I have to actually share with you. If anybody wants to actually start working in their document, they're more than happy to do that. And if they have any questions, I'm here for another hour and 20 minutes or so. So if you have any questions that are specific to your particular dissertation or thesis, I'm more than happy to help address and try to figure out a solution with you guys. If you're still a bit of a novice with LaTeX and you feel like you need a little bit more practice before actually going into your dissertation or thesis, I recommend you read through these other things, which is creating mathematical equations, including figures and tables, because the directions listed in those sections are the exact same directions that you would follow in order to add a figure, a table, an equation in your dissertation. The one thing that's not in there, the one thing that's not in there is a long table. And I really don't want to show anybody how to make a long table unless you want to know how to make a long table. Because imagine having a table that extends multiple pages. That's not going to work well just using the regular table package. And so you have to use the long table command. And you essentially, you could just copy and paste this, but this whole line of code is essentially how you would create, or this, excuse me, this whole chunk of code is how you would create a long table. It's very tedious. If you need one, there's an example here for you to go off of, but again, long tables are more or less rare when writing a dissertation or thesis. All right. Great, the hour is yours. If you have any questions, I'll come over and help. Have a great day.